We shall begin on the character traits, and first of all, we'll be talking about Barney. But as a reminder, I'll be telling people that the characters are the people in the story. For example, Barney, Ezekiel, Sarah. And then when you go to traits, we shall be talking about the behavior of the people. How do they act towards other people? What is said about them by the author? That is it about the character traits. To begin with, we shall talk about Barney. Barney, his first character trait, we shall call him observant. Observant in that, as much as Barney lacks the sense of sight, he is able to observe his surrounding. He's able to observe that there is a kind of suspicion in his brother's recent silence. That is it about being observant. Another trait of Barney, we shall look at Barney as being skeptical. A skeptical person is one who is doubtful. And we see that Barney expresses a lot of doubt in a number of things. For example, Barney is skeptical about the existence of God. When the brother is pressurizing him, Barney, do you believe in God? He is honest enough to tell the brother that he is not sure. He does not know whether God exists or not. He is doubtful about the existence of God. Still on being skeptical, we're going to talk about another illustration whereby Barney remembers his mother's appraisal of God. Yeah. And he remembers the mother appraising God as light and all, some white light. And then he's now thinking, what did light mean to a blind man? He's doubtful about the importance of light in his life. It will not amount to much good to him. We are still looking at Barney, and we can come up with a third character trait where we see that Barney is enduring. A person who is enduring withstands through a situation, especially a tough situation, but the person holds on through that situation. Looking at Barney, illustration of him being skeptical, we shall be talking about he endures the life in the streets for a very long time, despite the difficulties of the streets, such as we are being told that he was unsheltered. The corner that he used to recoil to, he was unsheltered, and also he used to depend on the aid given by the well-wishers. That is one illustration on him being enduring. Number two, still on enduring, Barney is able to withstand the pain, and it is only death that takes him away from the pain. The pain was intense. It used to cut across his stomach. It even goes ahead towards the spine. We are seeing that he's crawling on his elbows and knees. We are seeing that the pain even used to make him to sweat. But you see that he hangs on. He hangs on within that pain until death takes him away from that particular pain. Another character that has been discussed is the brother by the name of Ezekiel. What are the traits of Ezekiel? What are the character traits of Ezekiel? To begin with, Ezekiel is religious. Religious can be displayed through the fact that he is a preacher. He is a preacher, meaning that he believes in the word. Another illustration towards Ezekiel being religious is that he is adamant on Barney receiving Christ. He believes that for Barney to see heaven, first of all, he needs to acknowledge Christ as his personal savior. Therefore, Ezekiel is religious. Apart from being religious, we can also look at Ezekiel from another angle, in that Ezekiel is hypocritical. Illustration is that Ezekiel rescues the brother from the streets way too late. Yeah. The brother has been living in the streets for quite some time, but it is only last minute that Ezekiel rescues him from the streets. And after he rescues Ezekiel from the streets, he does not care so much as how Barney is faring. Ezekiel does not care so much as to how Barney is faring. We look at the kind of environment he has put up Barney in. Yeah. He has put him up in a lonely hut that is flea infested. That is your own brother. Yeah. And at the same time, he is putting up Barney in that for some particular reason. For what he needs, for his agenda to be realized. His agenda is that he has rescued the brother from the street so that the brother can go ahead and receive Christ. He's very adamant on it is about what he wants, not about what is good for Barney. Yeah. That brings him out as hypocritical, and also at the same time, he keeps reminding Barney of the good thing he has done to him. I've rescued you. If you've rescued someone, you don't have to rub it in.
Yeah.
He keeps reminding the brother, I have rescued you from those miserable streets. That is Ezekiel for you, religious as well as hypocritical from another angle. A third character, let's meet Sarah. Sarah is the wife to Ezekiel. They've been married for some time. And the character traits of Sarah that come out, first of all, is that she is religious. When she is consoling Barney, she's consoling Barney that his days ahead might be better. And she tells him that you will be all right as God will be with you. The fact that she believes in God and that she believes that God will turn Barney's life around brings her out as religious. Another character trait of Sarah, Sarah is also caring. She's the one who is taking care of Barney, administering the medicine. At the same time, when she's going to administer a dose of the bitter herbs, she takes care of Barney by raising his head slowly and tenderly. That comes out as some element towards describing her as being caring. Lastly, let's talk about the people in the streets. I'll generalize them, and the people that Mbane has interacted with in the streets, that those become our fourth character. The people of the streets, first of all, we can talk about them as being generous. They used to be the ones who used to sustain Mbane's life by giving him alms from time to time. Still on the people of the streets, let's look at them as immoral. After these people had earned their living, their money, they used to escape into the nightlife of pimps and prostitutes. The people who are dealing with pimps and prostitutes, as well as they used to delve into alcoholism, we shall look at them as immoral. Finally, on these people in the streets, we shall also call them hypocritical. They go to church, they're singing hallelujah, and as they're coming out of church, sometimes when the mood allows them, they would give Barney something. At other times, they would ignore and in fact turn judgmental. They look at him and tell him, you are able-bodied. In other words, look for a job. And you are able-bodied, but you're just accustomed to leisurely begging. They look at Barney begging. Instead of them as Christians showing mercy, having mercy on this Barney, what they do is they judge him as he's leisurely begging, calling him able-bodied. They're, in other words, asking him to go and find a job and make use of his life. That is it about the characters and characterization.
Thank you, Teacher Rispa. Students at home, with that we have looked at characterization, and just know that for you to talk about a certain character trait, of course you have to know the character at hand. And this is another short story, and when we look at short stories, then we're looking at just a few characters, having just one main character and maybe a few supporting characters to just bring out the story that, or maybe the message that the author wants to put across. And so looking at this, of course, you have Mbane, because everything basically revolves around him. We see the suffering he has in the heart, in the streets, and eventually the interactions that he has with his brother Ezekiel and his wife Sarah. And in this case, in this case, we're talking about Sarah as Ezekiel's wife. Now, we promised in our last episode that we shall discuss, or maybe we shall discuss a few essays using our English guru. When you look at this book, this is a book that you can use for your revision purposes. It covers paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3 in English. To top it up, we have discussed the new set books. So we have Fathers of Nations, we have The Samaritan, we have the stories in a silent song. And so students at home, if you're having English guru, you have a master with you. You'll not just be surviving, you'll be thriving in English lessons. And using this book, we shall be looking at 2 samples of essays using the short story, A Silent Song. And the first one that we shall use, if you have a copy with you, then you can open your books on page 326. And we shall discuss question number 16. And Again, a reminder, we have done an episode whereby our teachers discussed how to answer questions in essay writing, what is needed. So I'll just do an overview of what is needed before we look at the question at hand. And to start off, we say that when you look at the question, think about the question at hand, come up with synonyms, come up with a paraphrasing of the question, ensure that you understand what you have been asked. Because as our teacher said, sometimes students come up with their own question away from the question given, right? And they answer the question so well, but since you're not answering the question at hand, you end up getting very low mark in essay writing. So for a start, we said number one, look at the question at hand, understand it, come up with other words that you can use instead of the words that have been given in the question. Away from that, we have the different parts in essay writing, and to start us off, we have an introduction. We looked at various ways of answering or maybe coming up with an introduction, and we have almost 4 ways in which you can write your introduction. We have the general way, whereby you're looking at the question and you're coming up with a general view. Away from that, you can use the contextualized way of coming up with your introduction, whereby you're looking at the question at hand and then you're using what we have in the book. The third way, you can always use the two. You can look at the general way and then the contextualized way and come up with an introduction. Now, the next thing we have a body. In the body, in your essay writing, we said that you must have four points. So for the 4 points, then you're having 4 paragraphs. Remember what we discussed earlier. We said that for every point that you're discussing, you should have a paragraph that is full. By full, we mean that you should have a topic sentence, you should have supporting sentences, and a clincher. So in a way, you're concluding your paragraph. Have 4 points. If you're having 4 points, then you can get the 12 marks, because this is the highest score you can get in the body. Once you're done with the body, then you can talk about the conclusion. We said that in your conclusion, you're not supposed to introduce any new idea. So you're supposed to clinch, you're supposed to summarize, you're supposed to conclude. And with that, you can easily get your 20 out of 20 in your essay writing. So the question at hand reads, life in the streets as a physically challenged beggar is not a walk in the park. Show the truthfulness of this statement using clear illustrations from Leonard Kibera's A Silent Song. So number one, this is a question at hand. So students at home, ensure that you understand the question. We're looking at the kind of challenges a beggar or a crippled person undergoes in the park. Not in the park, but in the streets. When we say it's not a walk in the park, we're talking about the challenges. So number one, when we say a beggar, who comes into mind? Because that is the first thing you should ask yourself. And we're looking at the main character in the book, and this is Barney. So you have to look at the challenges he goes through in the streets. So to start off, you must have an introduction. So in your introduction, you can paraphrase, you can come up with a synonym, talk about the street beggars, talk about the people with nothing, and the kind of challenges, the kinds of struggles they have in the streets. So I'll read what we have in the book. Street beggars, especially those who are physically challenged, face a lot of struggles in their life. This is clearly brought out by Barney in A Silent Song. So looking at the introduction that we have here, we have talked about the challenges that happen out there, and then we have narrowed down to the story. So we have used the general contextualized introduction. With that, you can get your 2 marks. Okay, then the next thing we go to, we have the body, and we have talked about the body having four points, and the 4 points should be presented in paragraphs. The paragraphs should be sequential in a way. So look at, and students at home, maybe, and our teacher can attest to this, even before you start writing the essay, have an outline. So know in paragraph 1, I want to talk about Mbane, maybe in regard to poverty. So before you start writing, say my topic sentence is on poverty. So when you talk about poverty, what instances do we find in the story A Silent Song that showcase poverty? And then with that, now you have your supporting sentences. Now, once you're done with that, we're looking at not just any person, but a beggar. Yeah, a beggar who is physically challenged. So again, you have your topic sentence. So in the topic sentence, you can say, to begin with, beggars lack basic needs such as food and shelter. And then go back to the story and talk about Mbane. Mbane used to stay in a back street. He was begging. That is where he used to sleep. That is an aspect of poverty. We're looking at Mbane just sitting and begging for coins in the streets, and passers-by would just give him some little money. So this is another aspect of poverty. So if you're looking at this is a person who is barely surviving. So when you clinch that paragraph, ensure that you talk about Mbane barely having no food at all, or Mbane just barely surviving in the streets. So if you give all these, start with a topic sentence, give your supporting information, and the supporting sentences, again, we talked about talking about the background information. Yeah, who is Mbane? Where is he? He's in the streets. How do we see him suffering? How do we see him languishing in poverty? Now, on to the second point, and maybe since this is something that we have discussed before, I can just look at 2 points, and then using the English guru, you can just look at the other 2 points that we have. So in the second paragraph, you can talk about the kind of suffering this person goes through in the city or in the streets of the city in regards to how the passers-by treat him. So this is a beggar. He's blind and he's crippled. He doesn't have any money, so he sits on the street and just begs for some money from anyone who is willing to give something to him. So number one, you're looking at some good Christians. When they're just walking down the streets singing the Christmas carols, they think, let us just give alms to these poor man. But what do? They don't do it with a kind heart. They just say that this is a person who is well-bodied, but he's leisurely begging, right? So it's like a hobby he has, and not a want. He's in need of money, but they think that he's leisurely begging. This is so harsh to Mbane, and of course this is a struggle that he goes through. When you look at the city authorities, sometimes he wonders why they haven't swept him from the city. So definitely, if he's having these kind of feelings, he's suffering. He's not having a good time in the street. So when you clinch these paragraph, then you can talk about Mbane suffering in terms of maybe emotionally because of the kind of treatment he gets from people who ought to help him, but they're just doing it for the sake of it, and they actually don't mean it. And with that, ensure that once you have your 4 paragraphs, you end with a conclusion. When you conclude, don't add any new information. Just conclude your work. And it is important that you use a concluding phrase. You can say, in conclusion, to summarize, we have seen ABCD happening. So just conclude, and the conclusion that we have here clearly, the day or the night of a beggar is not easy. They have endured a lot for them to survive in the streets. And with that, you get your score in the conclusion. Using the information that we used in our previous episode, we discussed and said that for you to score the 2 marks in the conclusion, number 1, your conclusion has to be a perfect conclusion. You have to conclude. And then we look at the number of marks you have in the body. So if you're having more than 6, then you're able to get your 2 marks in the conclusion. And I think with that, during your free time, you can go through the question again. We have more questions on the same, and go through the other 2 points that I have not discussed. And with that, I think now we can look at another example, and our teacher Rispa can take us through.
Yes, you can still have another sample of an essay.
Yeah.
We are still taking it from our book, English Guru. a paragon of excellence. The work that has been done looks excellent.
Yeah.
You can attest to that. The second question comes in this. I'll read it out, and it says, in Leonard Kibira's A Silent Song, Barney's life is one of pain and hopelessness, and death is seen as a welcome relief. Before I can even go to that question, if I could just remind people the relevance of the title. Barney has been having feelings of over and over, feelings that are over and over coming to him, therefore has become a song. And it is in silence that he's making a wish that he wishes he might die so that he gets away from all the pain and the suffering. And our points will be taken from the themes of hopelessness and the themes of suffering. We're talking about pain and hopelessness. And at the same instance, what are we looking for in our particular essay? We are looking at the number of times that Barney has wished for death. If you're reading the same short stories that I'm reading, it is not only once that Barney has wished for death, but it has come a number of times. Death looks like an escape route to Barney. I'll start with my introduction. Our teacher has already talked about the different types of introductions, and also in another episode, we've already done that. There's no need of overemphasizing on the same. I'll go to the introduction, and for this particular one, I'd rather use a general to contextualized, or even if I settle on a paraphrased, I'll still need to go back to the contextualized because my question was specific, talking about Barney's life. They're not interested in any other person's life, but on Barney's life. And the introduction goes like as follows. In our society, the physically handicapped experience a lot of challenges. Oftentimes, they are looked down upon as unable. Some of them undergo immense physical pain. Born crippled and blind, Barney has suffered pain and opts for death as a way out, as will be discussed below. So if I touch on a point on pain, it will still be a point because with some themes, we cannot really acquire 4 points. Therefore, over here we've combined, we've talked about the pain, and other points will be emanating from the hopelessness, and then we see as the way he wishes for death. We begin with our first point, and you're saying, to begin with, Barney undergoes untold physical suffering. The physical suffering, we had captured it in another episode. We are talking about the pain that subsides, but then it recoils. It gets to his stomach, it gets to his spine, making him almost unable to walk. He's walking on his elbows and his knees. That is the kind of background information we want you to talk about when you're explaining about his pain. Could you tell us the extent of the pain? Because the book was informative enough to give us the details about the pain. And then still on the point on his pain and suffering, the book is very particular. It says, he is hopeless in fighting it, as he concludes that it is recoiling meant it is gearing up for yet another attack. It is said that he gave up the fight. That is now hopelessness setting in. He gave up the fight, let go of his chin, and hit his forehead on the dirt of the flea-ridden floor. That can be found on page 17. We've been able to capture the pain, and at the same time, when he lets go and he does not want to fight back, we are coming back to the point on Barney becoming hopeless. Then, even without the transitional words, firstly, secondly, you're supposed to be able to see a point coming very clearly. Each point a paragraph of its own. I'll go to a second point maybe, and then I'll just go to the conclusion. The rest of them, you can find them in our book. Looking at the essay, we are still talking about Barney's life of pain and hopelessness, and we are looking at death as a welcome relief. A second point, I was just about to give you a second point. I'll not dwell on all the 4 points. For more about the points, you can get a copy of our English guru. The second point that shows that Barney is suffering, Barney is hopeless, and he's wishing for death, I'll pick on another point that says, wishing for death on its own is a sign of hopelessness. Barney had wished that the big vehicle, Barney had wondered that why the big vehicle which emptied the dustbin had not swept him away. That can be found on page 19. We're looking at Barney is seeing an escape route. There is a vehicle that is collecting trash, and he's wondering, why am I still alive? Why hasn't the vehicle ever swept me away? Is another indication that he is hopeless. He's not enjoying in the life that he is living. In fact, that point has captured well on the hopelessness, at the same time the death becoming a welcome relief. But the point still continues. It has further illustrations. The point says, he felt that in death, someone would understand and raise the innocence of his crippled life along with the chosen. He feels that when he dies, he'll gain another form of life. The hope that his soul had a destination after death was his solace at night. His wish had gone an extent further that it is even keeping him awake at night. It is not once that he's wishing for death, but a lot of times. And sure, even the wish of death is as a sign of hopelessness. And what brings about that hopelessness in Barney? The fact that he is suffering as a crippled man as well as a blind person. Two other points can be found within our book. Therefore, this tells me to move into the conclusion. With the conclusion, just as a reminder, I've not been dwelling so much on the conclusion. Today is that day to dwell on that conclusion. A conclusion can come in a number of ways. It can be a point of view. Now assessing, and it has to be relatable to the question. Now that you're looking at Barney and hopelessness, can we have a point of view? Can we give some kind of a summary of the main points, or even a piece of advice?
Yeah.
Our conclusion can come in such varied ways. And I'll pick one that is a point of view, and I'll conclude by saying, to be in pain and suffering. Now my point of view about this question on Barney suffering, hopelessness, and death. To be in pain and suffering simultaneously is a dark place to be in. From the above argument, you can validate that death was a welcome relief from Barney, given the pain that he had gone through. That brings to a close our discussion in form of a conclusion.
Thank you so much, Teacher Rispa. And with that, of course, now we have looked at two samples using the short story A Silent Song. And we have discussed two essays that are quite different, but we settle or we write in the same way. So have an introduction, have 4 paragraphs, and a conclusion. And again, using our book, English Guru, you can get the points, because I think for the 2 essays we have just dwelled on 2 paragraphs, but the essay is complete in our book. So you can use it to even look at other stories, the other stories that we had looked at in the previous episodes. And with that, ensure that you subscribe to our channel. Ensure that you looked at our previous work that we have covered. As usual, we strive to bring high quality content. And this is not just for students having the KCSE exams to prepare for. We also have people who love reading. You can also listen in. You can also watch as we discuss these novels, because we have a lot to offer. And with that, it's a goodbye from us. Until next time, goodbye.